Okay, so that's done. The very last part of this, and I promise this last part of this before we just finish with the conclusions and then the resources. What about the subjective experience? And I said we would talk about this, and we've talked about it a little bit along the way, right? Someone who is a Muslim who says, I feel same-sex attractions. I'm not attracted to the other sex. I wish I were, but I'm not. And I can't just turn it on and off like a light switch. How do I live my life? Does Allah hate me? Am I a walking sin? Am I going to hell for these feelings, right? These are very important questions. And people who have these feelings, particularly same-sex desire, it's all thrown together. The Qawm Lut, the people of Lut, and fire and brimstone rain down upon them. Okay, but wait a minute. They were acting on it. You're not acting. Again, you're putting yourself with them because you're not distinguishing acts from behavior, because that's part of the modern paradigm. You are seeing them all together, but that's not Islam. Islam sees the desires one thing, the acts are another, right? So there are Muslims, faithful Muslims, believing Muslims, practicing Muslims who experience unchosen same-sex attractions and or gender dysphoria. This is real. This is statistically any certain human population will have always a number of people who face these types of issues. And Muslims, are naive if they think this doesn't exist in the Muslim community. It absolutely does, much more than people actually would think, because it's obviously not talked about, right? But this is a very real issue. All sorts of issues. Muslims are human beings like others. We have anger issues, drug addiction issues. We have issues of corruption and cheating and this and that, and all human virtues and vices to one degree or another are going to be present in any human community. We hope among Muslims, the virtues would be greater and the vices less than people who don't practice the religion of Islam, and that's generally the case. But nevertheless, we will always find, and this is not virtue and vice, it's just internal conditions. We said, again, very important, and I'm speaking, obviously, people watching this, some people watching this will be Muslims who are watching this because they themselves fall in this category, and they are concerned, how can I understand myself? What do I do with my religion? What do I do with my sexuality, right? Islam does not define or categorize people on the basis of internal feelings. You are not a specific subcategory of Muslim. You are a Muslim like anyone else, a brother, a sister, a member of your masjid, right? You are not this specific kind of separate category of human being because you feel this particular thing, right? And again, we must always distinguish between the feelings and the acts on one hand, and also between the acts and advocacy on the other, which we're starting to see, unfortunately, more and more of, okay? Muslims struggling faithfully, and this is also for everyone who's listening, especially Muslims who maybe are not dealing with this, Muslims struggling faithfully with either SSA, so same-sex attractions, or GID, gender identity disorder or dysphoria, they should be, I said struggling faithfully should be embraced and supported as mujahidun in the path of Allah. These are people struggling in the way of Allah. They're struggling with challenges and temptations, like we all have our challenges and temptations, and they are trying to live their lives according to the will of God and to submit, which is every Muslim struggle. And that is the straight struggle. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. Every Muslim is trying to go the straight path. No, the pun is intended here. And there is a support group called Straight Struggle. You can just click on this hyperlink.
Yep.
And it is a support group for Muslims who experience same-sex attractions or gender dysphoria, but who are committed to Islam and to living their lives.
It's a very good group. I do recommend it.
Right. And so they are coming together to support themselves and share resources and so on and so forth. And there's also a group based in the UK, Strong Support, Brother Ali Al-Jafari. This started about 2 or 3 years ago. So you have these two support groups, right? Now, Muslims, again, who don't deal with this should be aware. These feelings cannot simply be turned on and off like a switch. Well, akhi, that's disgusting. Well, like Allah gave you women. Well, okay, yes, that's right. But this goes much deeper than that. It's not simplistic in that way. And people, again, we can't afford to have such a simplistic, understanding, especially given our current context. If you speak that way, people say, okay, this person has no idea what this is even about, right? And therefore, anything you say on the issue is just going to sound, ridiculous to many people, including many sincere Muslims, by the way, right? Again, the gay identity paradigm is very, very, this is a very critical thing that, the identity paradigm is a big trap. It is a trap for the community because it completely upends the moral discourse of the Sharia. It upends the moral discourse because now the Sharia is is excluding people's core identities and undermining their dignity. This makes mincemeat of the Sharia. Also, this can be a trap for the person, him or herself, right? You're born in the modern world. Okay, well, this is who I am. Islam would say, this is not who you are. You're a Muslim. You're a servant of God. You're a creature of God. You don't have to identify with your sexual drives, even if you have exclusive same-sex desires. Okay, that's something about you, something you have. That doesn't define who you are at your core, right? Again, I hope you can see now, this is a modern social construct of the contemporary West. This is not universal. It is not Islamic. Yesterday or today, this does not exist in other times and places. You won't find corresponding vocabulary in most other languages in the world, today or in the past. If it's today, only because they're translating from Western languages, because again, the dominance of the Western paradigm, right? But if you are someone who has grown up in the West, then you have no other language except, oh my gosh, I feel this, I'm gay, this is who I am. You have no other language to process it because that's the only language that's available to you in the cultural sphere. And this talk hopefully has helped you to see that, wait a minute, that's a very contingent and specific way of construing this experience, right? And it can be construed other way, and these desires can be shuffled around and they can be given a different meaning in my life, and they don't have to form the core of my identity. And and it could in fact be very liberating not to have to carry around this burden that, okay, this is kind of who I am at my core, right? Especially when it conflicts with acting on it, conflicts with the religion. This puts you in a very difficult situation. But that identification, don't take it for granted, right? Now, other Muslims who are hearing this, don't say, if someone comes to you with it, oh, well, don't identify it. Okay, easier said than done, when for 20, 30 years or whatever, or 15 years, you've grown up in this kind of identity paradigm. And if this has been your struggle and you've come to see yourself as a quote unquote gay person, right? It's not just by hearing one talk or reading one article that you're going to just undo all of that. And, oh, okay, tomorrow I don't identify anymore. I have these desires, but they're just desires and not who I am and all. Okay, this takes time. This takes, really a lot of thinking and redoing one's emotional and, internal, rearranging one's furniture and all of that. Don't expect someone to just oh, well, Dr. Sharif said this was just Western contingent, whatever. So, yeah, well, it's true. But again, we're all products of our time and place, and we have to look at this realistically.